which we'll do now with Gabriela Carneiro da Cunha, who's a Brazilian artist whose work spans from performance, directing, research, and environmental activism. Over the past decades, she has developed margin projects on rivers, buionas, and fireflies, which is a long-term practice dedicated to listening and to amplifying testimonies of Brazilian rivers affected by environmental catastrophes. Her work has been presented at major international festivals, co-produced by Vidi Lausanne, including Festival d'Automne and many others. And her activity as a film producer included works such as Edna or Rivie, notably this very interesting, you'll talk about it, but this practice of developing production of filmmakers that are usually not seen originating from the Amazon and being extremely active about that. And you've also co-directed the extraordinary film, The Falling Sky, which premiered at Directors for Night at Cannes. The question of mythological machines is really at the center of your work, and so we're absolutely delighted to hear you now before we take on with a discussion with Nastasia. Thank you, Gabriela, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Nastasia, for the beautiful text and for being here together. It's a great joy to be here. I will speak in English. So we are here dedicated to think about myths. And somehow I wonder if an encounter like this one that we are having today can be also a mythological event, in the sense of it can be a time of transformations. The fact is that being here with you, Nastasia, today, has brought to me a desire to think about something from this specific encounter. I went back to your books, which have been accompanying me for a long time, and it was a joyful surprise to revisit my notes. And in several pages, it was written things like, make theater like this. And many sentences were underlined and written, theater, 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 repeatedly. So it pleases me to think of what kind of theater, what kind of cinema it's possible to create together with anthropology, together with shamanic perspectives, together with the forest, with the rivers, Araguaia, Xingu, Tapajós, and 𝗱'𝘂. And together with the mothers of the rivers, the mothers of the fishes, the mothers of the forests. So I ask your permission to begin this text with one of the passages that most captivated me in your book, Croix aux fauves et à l'est du rêve. So she says, one day in 1989, the light went out and the spirits returned. I bring up this conversation between Daria and Nastasia to think with you about the possibility of the return of the spirits at that moment known by all of us, when the lights in the theater or the cinema go out, just at the beginning. Theater and cinema are my places of work, places where precisely the beginning of everything happens when the lights go out. We turn off the lights to begin. We turn off the lights to allow something unknown to approach, to allow something to present itself, or as in analog photography, to allow something to be revealed. Something that is already there but cannot be seen without some kind of relational, ritualistic technology. That something that appears when the lights go out would be the artist's word, or a word that is proposed by the artist. In my case, the word that appears is not only mine and not only proposed by me. What appears is the aesthetic expression of a relationship between my word and the word of others, between my word dispossessed of spirits, and words populated by them. Following the conversation, Nastasha continues, "Where I come from, the light hasn't gone out, and the spirits had fled. I have a strong urge to turn off the lights. I, too, am returning to the forest tonight." So, 12 years ago, I turned off the lights of the theater that shaped me and returned to the forest. Since then, I have dedicated myself to creating artistic gestures based on listening to the rivers, Amazonian rivers, who are living a catastrophe. Throughout all these years, I have worked with the Araguaia, Xingu, and Tapajós rivers, all in the state of Pará, Amazonia region. I wanted to listen to a river to try to respond artistically to the time in which I live, Anthropocene, Plantationocene, Chihulocene, Capitalocene. The scene centered on the human on the stage. I am a woman of theater. That is a fact and a condition by which I move, I operate, and as such, I was educated in the centrality of the text, of the playwright's poetry, of conflict, of character. I was educated in the centrality of an actor, an actress on stage, of human body on stage, of human emotions, human psyche. In the staging that brings together lights, scenario, music, sound, time, objects, everything, absolutely everything and everyone at the service of humanity on stage. As the lights of that theater went out, a question arose. How can we respond artistically to the Anthropocene without performing an Anthropocene? I moved to the riverbanks, still without a language, to listen a river speak. I went to listen to the Buyuna women, the big snake women, those who inhabited the banks of this side of the world and of the other side of the world. They were Edna Rodrigues de Souza, Raimunda Gomes da Silva, Alessandra Corap, and Maria Leusa Munduruku. I went to where it is still dark, to listen to the fireflies people, those who dance despite everything, as the Dilberman says, or as Célia Chacriabá says, those who insist on celebrating even though they know they are at war. To this listening process that I once called a project, then research, then thing, which today I like to think of, along with Ursula Le Guin, as a basket, I give the name Margins, about rivers, buyunas, and fireflies. I will start by the last thread of this basket, the performance Tapajós, directed by me and the Tapajós River. Tapajós is a theatrical piece created from the listening to the testimony of the Tapajós River about the contamination of mercury of its waters because of illegal gold mining activities. It is important to emphasize that a large part of the gold illegally extracted from indigenous lands in Brazil is refined in Europe, being Switzerland the largest buyer and refiner of gold in the world. As the lights of that theater went out, the unknown who approached was precisely the chemical element responsible for contaminating the river waters, mercury. Oh, sorry. Beyond the story of illegal mining, mercury also tells another story, the story of analog photography. The same chemical that can make existence disappear can also make them appear. Thinking along with Donna Haraway, we created an unlike kinship with this chemical element, building a new articulation within the alive field. The staging aims to work in a territory between theater, photography, and enchantment. The alchemy of the photography process is a techno-shamanic procedure. The theater transforms into a photographic laboratory where images are revealed live while we hear a polyphony of humans and non-humans voices from Tapajós, which together compose not the dramaturgy, but the dramaturgy of this work. In this basket theater, dramaturgically woven from chemicals, herbs, bodies, light, photosensitive paper, the dance of Mafalda Pequenino, water from the Tapajós and water from each river where we perform, the audience hears the voices of those on the front line of this struggle, the mothers of the Tapajós. In the Tapajós, the Munduruku women, they are the most affected by the mercury contamination. The most affected people are the pregnant women because the organism of a pregnant woman expels mercury throughout milk for breastfeeding and the amniotic liquids in their wombs. So again, two nourishing fluids as the river becomes also a contamination. So is the tragedy of the not yet born. In one of the play's most striking lines, Maria Leusa Munduruku says firmly, "We are fighting for our territory, for our bodies, for our wombs that are sick. Our children are being born sick." When I asked Ediene Munduruku in a conversation about how the Tapajós River could be healed, she told me, "We need to work with the mother of the river. Everything that exists has a mother." To have and to be a mother in the margins of Amazonian river is a very serious thing. The river is a mother, the river has a mother. The Munduruku women are the daughters of the river, and the river is their child. A complex relationship of filiation and kinship, womb from which the myths that sustain life are born. To create the performance, taking seriously what Ediene told me, it was necessary to convoke the historical, mythological alliance she proposed. The joint struggle between the mothers of mythological time and historical time. The myth portrayed in the theater basket for and with the Tapajós River is the birth of a multi-species alliance between mothers, mothers from Tapajós and from the audience, women or men from all genders, the mothers of the fish, the mother of the forest, the mother of the river, suggesting that every body can be inhabited by a mother and that every mother is invited to fight. It's not about conceiving a human child, but is about creating and sustaining life. At the end of the performance, 9 mothers from the audience handle in the center of the stage a photography revelator made of herbs that they themselves have pounded and macerated along during the performance to reveal their own image imprinted on the waters of the Tapajós River. This is the magic of this work, to create a collective of mothers around this river. To this date, the play has been performed 60 times, and our collective now includes 540 mothers whose images are imprinted on the waters of a river they have never even been. If having and being a mother is a very serious thing in Amazonia, having and being an image is even more serious. Taking this photo of 9 mothers at the very beginning of the performance is an invitation not only to their bodies, but especially to their image. Going backward, I will use the image theme to arrive at the Yanomami people. For 7 years, I worked with the Vikopenawa Yanomami shaman, and the Watori community on making of the film The Falling Sky. The film is inspired by the book written by David and French anthropologist Bruce Albert. The book presents, in my view, one of the most powerful myths of our time, the falling sky. That is, when the last Yanomami shaman dies, whether by force of weapons or shawara diseases brought by the whites, and there is no one left alive in the world who knows how to heal and to hold the sky, as only the shamans know, the sky will fall upon our heads. Still, according to David, the night is the day of the Shapiri spirits, whose correct translation would be image beings. It is at night, in the world of images, in the world of dreams, that it is possible to really see things. One day during filming, David approached us and said, "You have a problem. This machine, the camera, likes light." He was referring to an attempt to film the night rituals that take place in the absolute darkness. Indeed, we had a huge problem, a cinematic problem: how to film without lights. We stayed with this problem, again, Donna Haraway whispering, and until from the darkness, on a Hereamu night, a Yanomami ceremony dialogue, the image of Justino emerged before the camera, an old man who appears and disappears with the blazing light of a flame that went out and on with the wind. Justino tells us that it was Titikiki, the spirit of the night, who used to give names to all the rivers. It was Titikiki who named the river Uxia'u, that now is named by the whites as Mukajaí. Justino looks directly at the camera, directly at me and Eric, the directors of the film, and directly at you, the audience in the cinema. And after a long narration about all the violence caused to his people for their encounter with the whites, others like us, he says, "And yet, after all this, today you are interested in filming me. Despite being old, I am letting myself be filmed, and I wonder if you will really be our allies." As he says this last sentence, the wind blows, and the film plunges back into darkness. Again, historical and mythological time intertwine. In the book The Falling Sky, David says that white people sleep a lot, but they can only dream with themselves. This phrase seems to me one of the most accurate diagnoses of the culture in which I was raised, and one of the most beautiful invitations to artists who embrace dream as the matter of their work and who work with those who still know how to dream far. Justino gazed at the light devouring camera and at us, call us to understand that turning off the lights and dreaming with others who are not ourselves implies, above all, also being part of the nightmare of those others. As I said, I'm telling the story backwards, so now we arrived at the Xingu, the second river. I worked with, on the Xingu, we heard the river's testimony about the construction of Belo Monte hydroelectric dam, or as the people in Altamira rather call, Belo Monster. To hear about Belo Monster is to hear Raimunda Gomes da Silva, a thinker and riverine woman from the Xingu, saying, "Altamira is a city of walking dead people, a terror film." It is to hear the public prosecutor, Thais Sanchez, saying, "Altamira is the energetic center of a water between two worlds, because here the two forces are enormous." It is to hear João Pereira da Silva saying, "If the Xingu River could speak first, it would cry." It is to hear the voice of the Xingu waters and the spirits of the Xingu waters, because one does not exist without the other, being muffled by sounds of chainsaws and explosions that dynamite the forest. To hear the Xingu is to hear Raimunda sing to her island before the island was burned and flooded by Norte Energia Company. She sings, "The word does not end here, the word still stands." Thus, listening to the Xingu River is also about taking Raimunda's song seriously and fabulating with her, with the river itself, with the enchantment beings, about the day the Xingu will flow freely again and the monster dam will be destroyed. This is Tapajós. This is Altamira. Listening is also about imagining together with. In Altamira 2042, our collective imaginative listening gave birth to 3 mythological machines who take the floor in the play: Mr. Dam Breaker, Miss Erundina, and Mr. Alienígenos, beings that only exist in the cosmological universe in this performance. Throughout the play, these 3 beings are activated to weave a historical mythological plot, a story within a story pregnant with another. There are stories of a woman who became pregnant by the first Jesuit priest of Altamira and whose daughter turned into a giant snake that now lives under the wall of Belo Monte. There is the story of a ship that is also a spaceship, that is also a construction, that is also the dam. There is the story of a spiritual war of incorporation into a single model between the progressians people who need the end of all other peoples to exist and the alienígenos people whose mission is to Amazonize the words. And finally, the story of people audience who meet in a basket theater to be the last thread of this plot. At the end of the piece, 7 women are invited to the center of the stage to collectively break a large concrete block. Armed with chisels and hammers, while an audiovisual image of the dam breaking and the waters of the Xingu River flowing freely is projected. The gesture is not a metaphor, it is a spell. The spell here is, at each performance, women from various parts of the world collectively open a fissure in Belo Monte Dam. The new myth that is created is the dam will break in 2042, and as all myth, it can be updated for today. It was when the light went out in the darkness of the night in Altamira that I dreamed of the Xingu River with the Xingu River, saying to me, "Take your history out of my riverbed." What I heard from this sentence was, "You don't have the language to speak to me. The language to speak to me is not the historical language. My time is not the historical time." I continued to hear that voice over time, and she told me, "A river is not a theme. A river is a language." This is the beginning. This it was when everything started again. It was when the Xingu, the poet river, taught me in a dream to approach things of the word as language, that the word itself began again in many, the time itself began again in many. Could the myth be a way of articulating languages? Could the myth be a way of inhabiting the darkness and opening our ears to the multiple human and more than human languages of the multiple living words, even if our eyes cannot see them? Unfortunately, ever since white people began naming rivers against the will of the Yanomami spirits of the night, Titikiki, we have come to inhabit a historical time contaminated by mercury, dams, nickel, contaminated wombs, and fish mothers who, lost in the flow of the waters, die rotting from their unborn eggs. Rivers that from the Amazon to Siberia are witnessing to increasingly violent catastrophe. Let the rivers then be the witness and speak out to mythologize a history that also concerns them. Raimunda once told me, the spirits of the waters exist for everyone, but not all people were born to exist for them. While my historical way of articulating language told me, don't believe in spirits because they don't exist, Raimunda's mythological way of articulating language tells me, the spirits who don't believe you don't exist for them. I think then that, in a way, that's what I'm hoping when the lights in the theater or cinema go out. The return of the spirits to exist for them. So, Nastasha, I return to your books and remember Appa, the son of the last shaman of 𝗱'𝘂, who looks at his river and awaits the catastrophe. He says, I'm waiting for the catastrophe because when it arrives, I want to be able to look it straight in the eye. I will be here where everything will begin and where everything will end. Meanwhile, I dream. I can only hope that in one of his dreams, Appa from 𝗱'𝘂 can hear the voice of Raimunda from Xingu, as she also faces the catastrophe head on. She sings, the world doesn't end here.